Welcome, folks, to the November 9 work session of the Harbor and Coastal Zone Management Commission. We should be streaming this evening on LMC TV and on our YouTube channel, as well as on Zoom. We don't anticipate a public comment period during this work session, and applicant items, as is consistent with our work session practice, we dealt with only for completion. However, if you're following along at home, we appreciate your interest in village affairs. Motion to open the work session. Second.
Yeah. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Work session's open. We have a short agenda. Let's take up the applicant item first. 572 Van Ranst. I took a look at this, and my first reaction is we will need more hydrology than many applications need. I pinged our consultant, Stephen Gates at AKRF, to ask about services and timeline. Stephen, you want to quickly review what we can get done and the timeline to get a report?
Sure. So, you had asked if we could, or we were going to look at the, the flooding impacts of the project, the potential flooding. I guess I would defer to you of when, we can probably do that as quickly as you need. I don't know, were you looking to have something before the meeting in 2 weeks, or did you want to hear from the applicant and then we could follow up with them?
I think we're going to need to hear from the applicant, but it would help to have have the person who's going to be doing the bulk of the work on that familiarized first, so that they can attend the meeting intelligently, and we can do a preliminary review where we're able to give the applicant as much information as possible about our areas of concern, and have them walk through this with and address consultant issues as completely as possible. This is they're represented by Cuddy and Fader, so if there's one thing I know from experience, they will be complete and well resourced in how they respond to any issues that arise. So that's good. We'll have a meaningful dialogue, and any issues we have, we want to let them know as early as possible.
Okay.
So that we're able to take into account everything they have to say, and think carefully about both what the applicant tells us and any other information that we make part of the record.
Okay. Yeah. I know my colleagues have already taken a look at sort of the design and the flood elevations and everything, so we can put together some points of, our preliminary thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, obviously, and it won't be a surprise coming from me, I viewed this primarily through the lens of riverine flooding, the location right at Columbus Park, in some of the deepest areas of that experience flooding in these all too frequent severe Mamaroneck River floods. So I view the application primarily through that lens, and my questions primarily through that lens. If other things grabbed people's attention, I want to give people the floor, and I would expect, knowing the applicant's counsel, I would expect that they're watching the work session to inform themselves where we're going and what we want. What do people think they need to know or want to explore to have a full record on this application? Andrew?
Thanks, Thomas. My major concern is the most recent flood, obviously being the worst flood that we've had. The waters being significantly higher than what they've been historically in the 2007 floods. So where do we go from there? What elevation do we build at? What's the minimum? Not in light of the old standard, but in light of the new reality, which is those waters can be significantly higher than what they've been in the past. And how do we do that? How do we go back and we set a new standard? Do we have the authority to do that? Where does that come from legally? And then the practical side, How do we make this building safe? And my primary concern would be that if people are trapped in their house during a flood for several hours, that's a bad thing and an inconvenient thing. But at least no one is going to drown in their house. So that new building has to be high enough where if people get stuck and they're inconvenienced for a few hours, that's bad enough. But no one's going to drown inside the house, or no one's going to have to escape to the roof like we had in the last flood.
Okay, so flood, the array of flood safety issues. Now, I'm very sure what I want on that is is flood hydrology, and also and also we may need an opinion on rescue safety. It's in other applications in the general area too. We've had citizen communications about the Superfund sites and the potential for contamination during deep water. I don't know what I need for a record on that. I just want to flag it so that we can have a discussion with the applicant and figure out what we need to know, because I'm not sure right now what I need to know on it, just that I can't ignore it.
Can you
Seamus?
expand on that a little bit?
Oh,
It's super fun. 'Cause-
yeah, in various places, especially the industrial area, but a few other places, there are old Superfund sites where there may be soil contamination, and if we're going to have excavation in those areas, we may need to know if they're exposing something or changing the course of something that could put it either into the water courses or raise some other kind of issue. But primarily, if they're going to dig down into it and put something into the water courses. Now, this is a fairly disturbed area. Van Rans is already developed and they're redeveloping. So it may be that that's not an issue. They're not going down any deeper. They're not doing anything that's very different. So it may not be an issue, but I just want to flag it so we can fully address it. And I know that we've got citizens that follow that very closely and know where all the issues have arisen in the past. So we'll get, if we don't address it, the public will wonder why we're not at least asking questions about it. So we'll have to address that. Seamus, what do you think you need to have a final review on this?
Yeah, I have a number of comments and notes on it that'll probably develop over discussing with the applicant. But what I've noted here might be worth mentioning is it does look like this application has a number of variances that they're going for. I think the height's higher, the area is maybe more, and parking is fewer. So just thinking through the variance process in the context of the location and otherwise. Parking, I think, is underneath. I'm sure we'll talk about that from a safety perspective. I believe that a Kellard Sessions environmental or engineering study was likely done. I don't think I saw it. Let me know if anyone else did, but I did see responses to it from the applicant, probably through the planning board process. But it's hard to gauge that because it's just like, comment number 3 noted or something like that. So it'd be good to see that. And then I think that there's probably some SHPO, historic register, scenic things to bring up. There is an LWP, I think, resource in Columbus Park that this would be within sight of, as well as the Mamaroneck River. And then we've had some citizen comment already on inconsistencies between what was marked on the EAF and the CAF. So I'll be cross-checking those. It's been brought to my attention, and I think that's all that's worth mentioning at this point in the process from my list.
Okay, Randy.
I agree with, we need all of that stuff, and the timing of an application in the floodplain is interesting, isn't it?
Well, a deep flood certainly concentrates the mind on those issues, but it's not new to us that 32 square miles of Westchester County drains right through Columbus Park and right out into our harbor. That's not new. That's been true as long as I've been living here, as long as you've been living here, and as long as, you know, as long as anybody's been living here. So while we're all more focused on it, I think, than we might have been 2 months ago, you know, there's a reason we have a set of floodplain policies, and we try to pay pretty close attention to those. It's in one of the lowest lying areas. It's right next to the river, and we got to pay attention to that stuff. Cami.
Sorry, slow on the unmute. I agree with everybody. My comments were basically with everybody, but then also I definitely wanted to have more information regarding the ground parking because it's on the ground level. And it seems like they're going for a lot of spots. So, and in conjunction with all of the issues with the cars being stranded with the last flood, that's pretty much, I'm the same with everybody else.
Mhm.
Yep. Okay. It sounds like we have a well-defined constellation of issues. Seamus, of course, you've raised the view shed issue. It's we've been through this once before on an application where outside the immediate vicinity of Harbor Island Park, it's a little more loosely defined in our LWRP. It's a matter of no dispute in the text that if you can see it from Harbor Island Park, it's a view shed concern. Our position in past applications has been that that's inclusive without limitation, so that if it's the sort of parts of the village that we think our neighbors expect us to protect as scenic resources, it's within the meaning of our view shed concern. Some applicants of council have taken issue with that, but we have flagged that we're gonna want to make a record that makes us comfortable on the view shed implications of this project. I think,
and interestingly here, if you note, I think in their responses to the policies behind the CAF, they actually noted the view shed of the LWRP resource in Columbus Park. So.
you know, well, we're fairly consistent in the way we express our concerns about our policies. So I think that has the benefit that well-resourced applicants sort of know what issues they're going to have to talk about, and that's good. Makes the process move faster. Okay, that covers what I think we.
I have a question. Do we know about? I guess this is proceeding in parallel before other boards. The applicants, are we, do we know the status, or they'll advise us over time of what approvals or what variances they get, et cetera?
Well, we will address the checklist of various needed permits or variances when they come before us. That's part of the preliminary process. And then if they need a bunch of stuff, they may not be back before us until they've knocked down a lot of those requirements. But it also gives us a chance to tell them if we have concerns that they need to address at this point, and then they go away and then they come back. This is a preliminary review, and eventually we're going to be advising the planning board on consistency, which is technically how consistency works. But this is not up for vote yet. This is a preliminary. So we'll ask them about all those. We'll make a checklist of the permits they need to get, and we'll revisit that checklist at the time we're ready to cast a vote on the final consistency, because we want to know that they're not going to have to change things that we've already passed on in order to get a permit somewhere, because that would possibly change what we think about something. Okay. So that covers what the applicant should come to us expecting it for our November meeting on this application. We don't have other applicants. We do have an administrative item of some significance tonight. We had a lengthy discussion at our prior meeting about the proper process with the state. We then received a communication, because they don't work quite like another applicant does. Instead, the state sends us a communication explaining there's a project and telling us, you tell us what your concerns are. And if we don't raise any, they say, great. And then we don't hear from them again. If we do, then they undertake to work through our concerns with us, not quite like an applicant would, but in a consulting process. So we got a new communication concerning the Boston Post Road Bridge, which is work in progress, but where, as they've taken the old construction apart and undertaken the project, they've apparently been changing the plan for the job, and they have asked us to weigh in anew on concerns that are raised by the pedestrian part of the bridge. We dealt with it at a sub-quorum workshop level over the weekend between me, Andrew, and our council. And we put together a draft letter that I sent to everybody for review ahead of the meeting. It did not make it onto the agenda. So that we're all clear on what we're doing, and so that the public is clear on what we're doing, I'm gonna take a minute to summarize what it is we are telling the state, and then we can discuss that. Since this is administrative, this isn't just for completeness or what should come before us at the meeting. This is for us to determine, and especially given the timeline, we have to get it out. So this is for us to wrap up tonight. What we want to tell the state as to policies 7 and 7A, our wildlife habitat protection, is that the state has mostly addressed it in its communications, but that we typically require the opinion of a professional wetland scientist that the proposed work will not have an adverse impact on the environment surrounding the work. In the absence of that sort of expert record, we don't have the confidence that we typically would have when we pass on consistency for a private applicant. So we want the state to consider the sensitivity of the Mamaroneck River estuary and the harbor, and use all practical means, including during construction, to prevent the release of any damaging chemicals or materials into the waterway or into the surrounding area. On policy 8, the protection of wildlife from hazardous materials, we propose to express a similar concern that we expect them to do everything practicable to prevent an unwanted release during or after construction into a sensitive area. Policy 11 is our protection of persons and property in the floodplain policy. We want to express to the state that we are, as a village, more at risk than maybe anywhere else in Westchester County on the Sound Shore. And we want to explain to them the seriousness of flood impacts in this area, and ask that and let them know that to properly apply policy 11 as our village does, the state has to ensure that work performed does not impede the capacity of the Mamaroneck River to move water into the Sound by even the slightest amount, and that any diminution in the watershed capacity in that area would not be consistent with our policy. We want to tell them, as to policies 19, 20, and 22, which relate to public access and water-dependent recreation, that we don't view those as merely defensive policies. That is, we don't think of them from the point of view only of not impeding recreation, but that those are policies that require us to look for affirmative opportunities to access, so that we want to make sure that the whether it's walking, biking, or just stopping to watch the sunrise, that they consider the waterfront access from the point of view of facilitating access and not merely the absence of impeding access. With respect to policies 23 and 25, which are historic and architectural resources and the scenic resources. And I will note that the state's communication to us does address policy 23 at some length, but they have reference documents that we don't have. So we want to note that we don't have their reference documents, and that the project will impact a historically and architecturally significant site, that bridge, and that we believe that they should do everything practicable to ensure that aesthetically both the beauty of it and the historical and architectural significance of it is preserved by making it look like it was before the work, to the extent practicable with modifications. And we haven't been able to review the appearance of the final project. While they include some maps, they don't include detailed plans or renditions. And finally, as to policy 44, the protection of our tidal wetlands, we want to express a concern that's substantially the same as we expressed as to the habitat and hazardous waste concerns. That's what I propose to tell the state after working through this with Andrew. I've sent a draft of that around, and I want to hear if anyone has comments about, and I think we're also going to note that we are asking for a review by our consultants, and if they are able to get us something in a timely fashion, we may modify our communications to the state in response to what our experts tell us. So that's what we propose to say to the state, and that then puts the onus on them to either implement what we've told them or come back to us and work through our concerns collaboratively. If people want to say something additional or different, now's the time for us to work through that. Seamus?
Yeah, quick. I thought the letter was terrific. I think this is a hugely important project between environmental, flooding, and scenic, right on the top of Harbor Island Park. It's critical to make the decision without seeing what it's going to look like, So I love the letter. Great. Only things I would add. One, do you think we should mention the Army Corps of Engineers project? Just when you talk about the fact that, this is a huge infrastructure, project is hopefully happening just upstream, that when we talk about flooding and, like you said, on, ability to evacuate the water through there. And then the only other comment I had was, I wonder if at the end of the letter, we should add anything that's more strongly worded that we would expect to receive this supplemental information or have them come to a meeting. Other than that, I thought the letter was great. So thank you for taking the time to put it together.
I like those comments. We'll incorporate. Randy?
Yeah, I sent you an email. I think it's great. I do think it's important to have our experts, the AKRF, comment on it.
Yep. And
push them to
I'll
do
turn
that.
to Stephen in a sec to give us any available update. But let's just get through the roll call. Cammie?
I thought it was great. I don't have anything to add to it. It's good.
And Andrew, you were part of the drafting, so I think I have your thoughts incorporated.
Yes.
You think it was great?
Thank you. Steve, it's writing long letters expressing policy. It's kind of the core skill set. Stephen, I had pinged you before about supplementing our communications to the state with consultant review. Is there anything you can tell me about what we're able to do?
Well, I've taken a look at it. To be honest, I didn't have a lot of time to dive too deep into it, but I did read it and looked at the materials from DOT, and I thought the letter was, pretty robust actually, and covered good ground. So I will try to let you know if I have any additional points in the next couple of days. But overall, I thought it was pretty sufficient, but I also wanted to point out, you mentioned that you were looking for more historic information. As part of the attachments, there are the memorandum of agreement documents that are associated with the section 106 historic review. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for, or if there was something, I can point that to you.
Oh, thank you. I think I missed that in this.
Okay.
It was actually, if they gave us a decent sized submission. It was almost 100
Yeah, it's a lot of
materials.
documents.
Unlike the last time we saw something from the state about this process, which was essentially we've picked our contractor, which wasn't much to go on. They sent us a real packet of stuff this time, and that was valuable. And we're not, expressing our concerns because we're picking on them. We're expressing our concerns because it's an important project. Stephen, please let me know where in the packet to find that, because I think we didn't have a lot of turnaround time.
Right.
They sent this and we just dealt with it pretty much right away because
Yeah.
we didn't have a lot of time.
Understood. Yeah, I will point you to that.
That's helpful. Okay. So that's our administrative item. An update on another item. We worked through the potential changes to the our proposal to the wetlands law, and I think that has been put in final format and pushed up the chain. The trustees are hopefully going to consider that in due course, and that will round out our wetlands law so that it is inclusive of wetlands, watercourses, inland, coastal, both. Makes another number of other best practices amendments to the existing law. Adds a bunch of it's a pretty thoroughgoing job we've done here, and I'll be glad to see a more complete statute there. We have a set of minutes that I'm going to ask that we punt because I didn't have any time to look at them, and we shouldn't vote on minutes we haven't reviewed. I think the final thing we have is we have a communication. We have an update on an existing litigation. That is a proper grounds for executive session. I think we will not be able to go back into public to have our adjournment vote. So I'm going to move that we finish the meeting in an executive session and adjourn from an executive session in order to discuss an update to an existing litigation. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Stephen, let's see if we can go back into the Zoom practice session.
Yeah, I am not seeing that option. I see where we can stop live stream, but I don't know if that puts us back into practice. If it's all right with everybody, I could just end this Zoom call and then everybody could just sign back in with the with the link that you signed in tonight. Does that work for
Let's
everybody?
do it.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. See you all in a few minutes.